Bienvenue et merci beaucoup d'être venu à ce tuto de vocabulaire aujourd'hui. Aujourd'hui, on va parler des médias et de la presse. The reason why I chose this topic is because I think it's quite topical, isn't it, for us to talk about what we've been recently watching on the television, what we heard on the radio, and sometimes we're just missing that little bit of vocabulary for us to be able to pinpoint and explain what we want to say. So it would be quite nice, wouldn't it, to have that sort of vocabulary at your fingertips. I also think that there's some quite surprising vocabulary in here as well that you might like to use just because of that reason. So let's have a look together. So this is taken from a vocabulary book which is in the same series as the grammar book that we use, La Communication Progressive. It's all part of the same series. Okay, so l'audiovisuel. Okay, so let's start off with radio. Les auditeurs, auditrices, so that's the listeners, peuvent écouter de nombreuses stations de radio, publiques ou privées. Now, can I just point out that I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but sort of point out that you're going to see lots of the third person plural in this text here. And this is something that's come up quite a lot recently, that we don't really, when we're talking about I did this, what did you do, we did this, we don't seem to use that third person plural very much. And then it's sort of, we get out of practice and we forget how to form it. So I think actually in this particular article, it's quite useful to just notice those third person plurals like this one. So les auditeurs peuvent écouter. That's quite useful to just a little reminder that that's how you say it when you're talking about more than one person, when you're saying they. Okay, so listeners, and you can listen to public or private. Now, this is what I find interesting. So, qui émettent sur onde courte, onde moyenne, grande onde, ou modulation de fréquence. So, I'm sure you can work those out. So, short wave, medium wave, it's a bit dated, isn't it, this? Long wave, and FM. And just to notice, we haven't got a le or la in front of onde, but we can tell by the adjective that it's feminine. So that's another thing to just notice when you're hearing something being described. It's good to know that it's masculine or feminine. So in France, les chaînes de télévision, publiques ou privées. So if you're looking for a channel, the name for a channel, c'est une chaîne de télévision féminine. And they're transmitted, so sont transmises grâce à la TNT. Now we get some technical stuff here. I don't know if you know about this technical stuff in English. Télévision numérique terrestre. So this must be the digital. Numérique is always referring to digital things. Ou réseau câble. Now you know réseau. You've seen réseau social, social networks. A réseau, you see it associated with buses as well and trains. It means network. So réseau câblé. And then satellites, obvious, and internet. Ou à l'internet. And then they say, well, to look on the little screen. So le petit écran. Le petit écran. Now, people listening to the radio are listeners. People who watch the television are les téléspectateurs. Les téléspectateurs. Ou autrices. It's a big debate in France at the moment that you must have a masculine and a feminine of every grouping of people that you can have. So another third person plural, doivent avoir un téléviseur. So that's a television set. Or another way of saying it, un poste de télévision. And an aerial, une antenne, or even éventuellement, éventuellement, or even parabolique, and that would be a dish. So, le programme est l'ensemble des émissions de radio ou de télévision. So the whole sort of like program, the radio listings, the television, the TV listings would be the whole thing together of émission. So when you're looking for program, when you want to say, oh, I watched this program last night, or I watched this program on Netflix or whatever, you're looking for the word une émission. That's a television program, or one on the radio as well. And if you want to talk about a whole series, then you would talk about une série, une série d'émissions, une série Netflix, par exemple. So useful words if you want to refer back to something that you've seen. Right, what else have they got to say? So, les médias donnent, communiquent les nouvelles. So now we're going on to talk about the news. So, les nouvelles is the news. And then they say c'est-à-dire, which means, c'est-à-dire, nice little phrase. Les événements de l'actualité. So remember, l'actualité is current. So this is current events. L'actualité means current. So remember the word actuellement is a false friend and it means currently. It's got nothing to do with the word that it seems like it has a relationship with in English. So presented on the radio, so à la radio, à la télévision. So we would want to say sur, wouldn't we? That would be the English way of saying it. Just notice it's not sur, it's à la radio, à la télévision. And then the news, another way of saying the news is les informations. And like a lot of words in French, just really shrunk down to les infos. Les infos. And quite often you'll see le GT. And if you've ever watched one of those TF1 13h with me, one of those ones that we, from the channel TF1, you'll notice that that's referred to as le GT. And that's short for what we can see here, le journal télévisé. So le journal is the newspaper. So again, it's another way of saying the news. Then les envoyés spéciaux, les journalistes font des reportages sur les sujets d'actualité. So envoyés spéciaux is a bit similar to English, isn't it? So we've got three groups of people we've introduced now, haven't we? I'm just going to go back up to the top here. So we've had the listeners, les auditeurs, les auditrices. We've had the people watching. I can't find them. They're on there. There they are. Thank you. Les téléspectateurs, les téléspectatrices. Long words, aren't they? And now we've got the people who are presenting. So les présentateurs, les présentatrices. You know, when you have a long word like that, take your time so that you do pronounce every single syllable. And they annoncent ou rapportent les nouvelles. So they announce or report on the news. And this is, yeah, I would agree with this, in a way that we hope is impartial. So obviously impartial. Sans prendre parti. So we can guess impartial because obviously it's exactly like English. But the other way of saying it is sans prendre parti, so without taking a side. So impartiality. Now again, we would say something is on the telly, wouldn't we? Or on the radio. They don't say on, they'll say quelque chose ou quelqu'un passe à la télé. To be on the radio is passer. So it's just really nice to use the right verb. I mean, people would understand if you said sur la télé, but it's just really nice to use the correct verb, isn't it? So passer à la télé, obviously that's been reduced down from télévision. Or il passe sur les antennes. You can guess where that comes from. And the event can become mediatized, and this is often criticized. What else might you find on the television then? So, un débat, obvious. Un face-à-face télévisé. So, face-to-face, televised. Une conférence de presse, that's pretty obvious. Une interview, obvious. Peuvent être retransmis ou diffusés en direct. La retransmission. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I would have thought that the re would have meant that was sort of like something that came out after it being live, but all of these are referring to live transmission. So these are all live. So être retransmis, diffusé en direct, which is the most common way of talking about it. Sometimes they just say en direct. En direct means live, or la retransmission. And I'm just going to draw attention to the fact it's re and not re, because there's no accent on that E. But if it's a recorded one, then it's au contraire en différé. L'émission est enregistrée, that means recorded, avant la diffusion, which is before putting it out there. So en différé is recorded. And then they're saying, and then you can measure the parts of the audience, you know, they can measure their viewing figures. And again, let's just notice the use of that verb passe, passer. So la télévision passe aussi des films de cinéma, des téléfilms ou des feuilletons à épisodes. So des feuilletons, these are soap operas or dramas or sitcoms, you know, those sorts of things would fall into the category of les feuilletons, which must come from the word leaf. I don't know, leaf through or something, I don't know. It's in episodes. Les téléspectateurs zappent souvent et passent d'une chaîne à l'autre. We're using the verb passer again. So zapper is to get your télécommande. We never used to call it anything else in our house, actually. La télécommande et on zappe. Yeah, so obviously, you know, I don't even know the word in English. I've used it so many years in French. And then they're saying, you know, the media can do some sondage, which are surveys that allow them to measure. Sonder is to measure. So that's where the sondage comes from then, sonder, to measure, another way of saying to measure. On pourcentage, percentage, l'opinion publique. Okay. And we've got some couple of expressions imagées, which just, these are idiomatic expressions. They don't mean literally what they're saying. So what have we got here? We've got Anne et moi sommes sur la même longueur d'onde. Nous nous comprenons très bien. So if we just remember, longueur d'onde came from, I'm just going to scroll back up here. We had onde up here, and they were the waves, weren't they? So they were all the different radio waves. So can you guess the meaning then of this? Anne et moi sommes sur la même longueur d'onde. And then they've got it, nous nous comprenons très bien. We're on the same wavelength. It's quite nice, isn't it? On the same wavelength. And then we've got this other one, Joël a des antennes. That's quite visual. Elle a beaucoup d'intuition. So she's quite intuitive. Good. So hopefully some interesting phrases for you there, and you can start talking about things that you've seen on the telly with a little bit more of the right vocabulary, so you just feel a little bit more ease discussing the topic. Très, très bien. Bon, merci beaucoup d'être venu et je vous souhaite une très bonne fin de journée. Merci. Au revoir.